It's a pressure cooker. You got to tune everything out, compartmentalize, and you really got to just be wired for it. I always make the analogy to like Kobe in basketball. It's kind of like how a trial lawyer is wired.
Yeah, so I think in the early years, probably the key characteristic that helped me start building a team and gathering people around me was my enthusiasm. I loved what I did, and I think that rubbed off on people. Still do, love it every day, coming in and fighting for people, trying to see justice. The hardest person to lead is yourself. That's what he would say, and I found that to be true. But once you start leading yourself, you start to be intentional about growth, be intentional about investing in yourself and learning and growing.
Hello, everybody. Logan Quirk with Q's Quirky Podcast. I'm here with John David Huffman, managing partner at Pool Huffman. John, thanks for joining me today. I know we are introduced through Margarita. Why don't you give me a brief thumbnail sketch on who you are and how you came to be on my podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm a managing partner, trial lawyer at a firm located in Metro Atlanta. And we specialize in litigation, mostly fraud-based cases that take place in the context of like real estate and business disputes. It's primarily the context that they're in. And we got introduced through our CMO. I don't know if she's also your CMO as well, Margarita Eberline.
Excellent. And what kind of work is Margarita doing for you?
So we just hired her a couple months ago to be our chief marketing officer. So she's currently just beginning to implement the strategy she's been working on for the last 30, 60 days, gathering data, seeing what we're doing, and that's where we're at.
Margarita and I got introduced through a podcast I did with her company, and then she was on my podcast, and she's wonderful. So to answer your question, she's not my chief marketing officer because my ideal budget is not in her wheelhouse yet, but hopefully someday it will be. So congratulations on hiring her. She's a firecracker and a world of knowledge. So I hope she's able to take you guys to the heights you guys are looking towards and beyond.
Yes, she's great.
So I did a little background research into your firm and particularly your background. And one of the things that came up was fraud, business disputes, real estate disputes. But you kind of have this reputation as a fraud buster and a master cross-examiner. And I've done some trials, and I think most trial lawyers will tell you that the most fun is crossing experts and just nailing them. Mm-hmm. So why don't you expand on how you got those monikers and your experience with fraud busting and cross-examination?
Yeah, so probably my experience with cross-examination came as a child with my family. We had a lot of spirited arguments, and so that type of dialogue, and it was always, of course, with a certain amount of love. But we had some spirited conversations in our family, and so when I started practicing law and had some cases with these types of elements in them, it was sort of a natural for me to begin that process of cross-examination. It's probably my favorite part of any sort of trial. Even when you get to do it in a deposition, sometimes strategically you're a little bit laid back in a deposition because you don't want to broadcast what you're doing, but sometimes it's appropriate to sort of go full bore, try to solve the case. But I find that the most important thing about it in this context, which is fraud, and I realize you're in a personal injury context, and maybe a lot of the people you're dealing with on the other side of your cases are good people, just made a mistake, generally weren't dishonest. But in a fraud case, I'm dealing with somebody that's generally should be categorized as a criminal. And we're mostly in the civil context. Occasionally we get into some probable cause hearings and things like that in the criminal context. But the most important part is pressure. Pressure. You got to keep going at them, keep putting them under the gun. And what you'll find is eventually they will lie because fraudsters are liars at the core. They lie when the truth will do just as well. And sometimes when that pressure builds and mounts, you get something out of them that you really need. And that can be the make or break in the case. So we call it persistent, unrelenting pressure. We like to have that in our cases as sort of our style of litigation, but also in that cross-examination, especially.
That's really neat. It's always good to be on the attack and not be on the defense, I think, as far as trying to litigate cases, because you always want to be, like you said, applying the pressure and controlling the narrative. So I think that's really, really important. What do you think is one of your most favorite stories or one of your most moments of renown insofar as cross examination?
Yeah, so I've been able to extract a couple apologies on the stand, which is an extremely sort of pivotal moment, as you can imagine. It's often very emotional. I found myself actually getting teared up when it happened on one of the occasions. So I'll tell you what, I'll tell you two stories. The first one I'll tell you, which was an infamous non-apology, and then I'll tell you about an actual apology. So about 6 months ago, I was cross-examining a former boyfriend of my client. They had swapped power of attorneys while they were dating. They had been dating for like 10 years. And we were at trial. And after they broke up, the boyfriend took the power of attorney and tried to steal her house. I don't know how any way else to describe it. He took it, transferred title to himself and his elderly mother at the time. And so the court had awarded my client the house back. And so we then went to trial in front of a jury for damages. And his lawyer, who had just jumped into the case, was doing the best he could. I really do think that. Stood up in opening and said, my client's going to get up on the stand, and we know he didn't do everything right, and he's going to apologize. And I said, okay, great. So I called him on cross, and I said, your lawyer said in opening you were going to get up here and apologize. And he goes, yeah. And I go, all right, let's hear it. And he goes, I'm just so sorry we're all here. And so it went on like that over about an hour and a half. I gave him 6 or 7 opportunities to apologize and mea culpa, and it never came. Every time it was sort of a non sequitur or somebody else's fault. The jury hit him for about $600,000, and we really only had about $80,000 in actual damages. So full fees, punitive damages of $250,000. But one of my favorite times was I had a client who was getting a sort of a nursing certificate or degree that was sort of a higher degree, and they were at a school here in Georgia, and the school had represented to her that they were accredited to issue this degree. So she, like a lot of other students, it was a very niche program, so there weren't a lot of students in it, but she took the classes, she did her clinical hours, and then she found out at the end of it that they weren't accredited, so she couldn't get the degree. So we wound up and filed suit against the school, which was actually, part of the state of Georgia because it was a public university. A lot of things to dodge in that case. We were happy just to get the trial. And when we did, we had the director of nursing on the stand, and I just remember asking her sort of towards the close. I said, "Well, ma'am, did you kind of up here telling me that the school really didn't do what was right? Did you ever apologize to my client?" And she goes, "No." And I go, Did anybody else in the school ever reach out and say, we're sorry, Noreen, what's happened to you, and we're sorry? She goes, "No, not that I know of." And I said, "Well, would you like to do that right now?" And she just turned and looked at my client. She didn't have a financial interest in the case, so that does kind of make a difference. And she just turns and looks at my client and says, "Noreen, I'm just really sorry." And even today, it kind of chokes me up because it was so emotional for her. My client, she broke down crying, and it was what she needed. The state quickly settled with us, as you can imagine, after that, before we actually. So that was about day 2 or 3, and they settled a few hours after that with us. And she got everything she could have wanted, and she got her apology. So it was full restitution. Yeah.
That's amazing because I imagine, most people don't realize getting a full admission or apology is quite rare. And most people won't ever, as lawyers, won't ever see that, especially on cross-examination.
No.
So kudos to you. You've done 2 more than I think I've done in my career. And then the second part I think I really like about your stories is it's not just money for some of these people. A lot of times when you've been duped or frauded, you're embarrassed, you're ashamed. And just getting that level of being recognized and seen, it's got to be fulfilling for your clients. So I know you're not just, the money aspect is obviously how they get reimbursed and compensated, but getting some closure to a really terrible situation. So tell us a little bit about that for your clients.
The dignity restoration that comes from a verdict or a resolution in the case is very important to clients. In fact, arguably it's more important to many of them. I have a lot of clients, and as you can imagine, we have cases where you've got a criminal, you've got a con, they sometimes flee the state, leave the country. Sometimes the collectability of these cases is difficult. And you have to tell the client, of course, we do up front, look, I don't know if I can collect anything from them. And they still choose to go forward because they want to see that sort of reputational restoration. But sometimes that's a key component for like business owners that have been duped. But for the individuals, it's really important for them, these clients, maybe not for everybody, but for these particular clients, in my case, is to have that jury of 12, look at that lady who was a girlfriend in that story and say, you know what, you were right, and this guy took you for a ride, and it's wrong. And we're going to send a message that it's wrong. And it's really rewarding to see some of the personal sort of development come out of those stories, because it's a story of resilience for the client, right? They're going through this process, and I watched them fight an uphill battle, go through a lot of arrows thrown at them. A lot of fraud defendants will accuse them of fraud. I mean, I had a whole case where we had to wait 4 days to put on our case because they accused my client of fraud the whole time, and go through a lot of trauma. And then to come out on the other side, I see clients lose weight. I see them find real motivation, real purpose, and a real story in their life. I heard somebody say the other day that sometimes for some people, your purpose may be right next to the worst moment in your life. That's where it might be. And that's where I see some of these people go through their worst moments and come out with such wonderful purpose.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful story. I really like that. You got to sometimes go through the bad to get to the good.
Yes.
And I was going to ask you about the collectability of some of these clients, because we've all had those cases where, the collectability on a judgment might be difficult, but I'm guessing you're getting paid up front, so you're doing whatever the client tells you to do.
Yeah, that's right. We follow the direction. We advise them up front. Some of the cases are a little bit more clear on the collectability than others. Some are more of a risk. Some of them we're like, you're probably not going to collect. I mean, it's sort of a spectrum. Sometimes we do a good bit of collection, sort of complicated collection work here. So we can look into the assets. Do they have any real estate owned? I know you're in California. I don't know what the laws are about collecting against people's homes, but we can see if there's equity in their home and things like that. We get pretty creative. We had one defendant. We got an arbitration award, and in the process of trying to turn that into a judgment, he tried to do what I call pull an O.J. Simpson and move to Florida, buy his house, and protect his money. And so he put his house up for sale in Georgia. We were able to run into court and get the judge to freeze the equity in the house and made him pay it into the court. This was before we got a judgment even against him. So he could sell his house. He paid the money into the court. He later filed bankruptcy in Florida, but we got it all. I mean, we had to fight for it, but we got it all, his equity for the client. So, yeah.
Kudos to you, man. Thinking on your feet. That's really ingenious. So I want to know, how do these people come to you? How are you getting your clients? Is it through other lawyers, marketing efforts? I know you just hired Margarita, so obviously you're looking to ramp up the marketing a little bit. What's working for you guys getting your clientele that you want to represent?
Sure. So really all of the above. We have traditionally gotten a lot of our business from referrals from other lawyers. So we tend to build relationships with transactional lawyers, closing attorneys, M&A lawyers, corporate lawyers that are not doing litigation. And we don't do any transactional work here at our firm, so there's sort of the reciprocity between the parties. And that's how we've gotten the vast majority of our business. But recently, we've had some people find us online. This is my second podcast, and someone actually saw the first one and hired us a few days ago. They may have found us through Google or something first, but so other means. I'm actually getting ready to write a book about fraud here, coming out in the next 6 months or so. And so those are the kind of marketing efforts that we're doing.
Awesome. So congratulations on your podcast. You're a natural. I'm over here stumbling, and I've done a lot more of them. So hey, well, thank you. Being on both sides, it's fun to do. How has been your foray into getting into the digital space? What are some benefits and some cons, we'll say drawbacks to it?
Yeah, generally the clients are a little bit more vetted when they're referred, and they're often a lot warmer. So there's sort of that trust factor that you get when they're referred directly to you. The leads that come from the internet, you have to spend some time establishing some trust with them, and especially at the beginning, even before the representation, of course, that's true. But I think also once the representation has begun, because they don't have that sort of referral from another person, then that trust is not immediately there. So I'm constantly trying to encourage the lawyers around here to spend a good bit of time just in the beginning, listening, connecting, trying to find common ground with the client, telling them a war story or two so that they can develop a natural trust with you, which by the way is often the same way that cons work. So be careful. So this is my job, to warn people about fraud. So when you get referred to, somebody gets referred to you, and then they turn around and ask for money from you, be careful. Okay, that's one of the first things about establishing trust. So is that connection with somebody else.
Yeah, I like that message. You got to know, like, trust your referral, and the warm referrals definitely have a built-in level of trust and credibility.
Yeah.
And I think with the digital space, what I've known is you definitely have to spend more time getting a rapport and then having some type of other validation system so they can go independently verify what you're telling them. And I found that's what's best. And I think what you're doing right now is a good way to get your personality out and to get the word out and to have another validation system that isn't just coming from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So I think Margarita has you off in the right direction. And I think you're going to see leads come in from places you never even imagined.
Maybe so. What do you use for other validation? I know you're the one asking the questions, but if I can ask.
No, good. I do a lot of social proof, a lot of social media. I've been doing that for a while. Google reviews were, Yelp reviews were before social medias. And then testimonials are always good, having like a built-in bank of reviews that you can point people that might have some objections, like, I don't know, it might cost too much. So you have people that have reviewed you about cost, reviewed you about maybe experience, and then you can point them to other people or to other experiences that say, hey, I understand these people have the same objections to you. Here's what they said about me.
Right.
Or here's their telephone number. Go ahead and call them. And if you want to do, go ahead and interview some of these people. So I think it's kind of like any other process. I would imagine your clientele is a little bit harder to, they're a little more cautious because of the experience that they've gone through. So they're going to be a little more cautious putting their toe into the water versus some of the other clients that maybe I'm representing because they haven't been defrauded already. So I think there's got to be a little more, there's a longer closed session and trust building with your clientele, especially on the fraud side.
That may be true. Yeah. That's a good idea. I've occasionally given a prospective client a former or current client's phone number. Yeah, but that's
I don't know. I think just thinking outside the box, that's kind of, especially in, I don't know. I do think the Google reviews, the being who you are and who you're going to hire, and they see your personality has been sufficient for me. But those people that haven't been sufficient, here's a group of people you can call with their permission and go ahead. I have rarely ever had people take me up on that, but I think that's a level of really, really vetting your attorney. So I did notice on your LinkedIn, you guys also serve as we call them like the 11th hour counsel. Tell me about that role where you guys kind of come in at the last minute, take over a case for a firm and try the case for them. So for some people that don't know that role, explain that.
Yeah, certainly. So on occasion, we helicopter into a case. That's kind of what we call it, and try it. We come in as trial counsel. There's a lot of lawyers that like to litigate, like to take depositions, don't love to perform in front of a jury. And so on occasion, we get hired to come in and helicopter in and take it over and try it, which we love to do. So that's kind of our bread and butter around here.
That's neat. I have access to a lot of people who love to try cases, don't like to try cases, and everywhere in between.
Yeah.
And I always tell people like trial lawyers are wired a little bit differently. You gotta really love what you do because it's really it's a pressure cooker. It's you got to tune everything out, compartmentalize, and you really got to just be wired for it. I always make the analogy to like Kobe in basketball. It's kind of like how a trial lawyer is wired. Do you find that to be true? Am I totally mistaken? Tell me what you think about trial lawyers.
No, I think you're 100% right. There's got to be a certain level of risk taking and put yourself out there. I mean, trying cases it's a lot of work, and but it can be very, very rewarding. So I had 5 trials. I believe 4 of them were jury last year, which is a lot for our practice area. I've got one on Monday, actually. So I'm gearing up for it right after we get done here. So.
Well, you look remarkably refreshed for going into trial on Monday. So I'm gonna, whatever you're doing, keep up at it. It must be the hydration.
That's right.
So you did mention that you are managing partner. What is your role as managing partner at your firm?
Yeah, so I have a partner, and we kind of co-manage the firm. My role is leadership here. I lead a team of lawyers. He also leads a team, so we kind of have it split up that way. His role is a little bit more operational than mine. I kind of lean into the marketing and the sales a little bit more. So that's kind of the way we have it divided up. But leadership is one of the main components, which I love, and I'm learning a lot about. So
It's always an educational process being on I'll say the management side because we're not trained to be business people. We're trained to be lawyers, and it's kind of I've learned on the fly, and I'm sure you've probably I don't know your experience, but that's how I found the best experience was learning on the fly, trial and error, and it's become more difficult or it's become an experience for me to learn the management side. I don't even know if I've learned it, but from what I've gathered so far, maybe it's just been happenstance. Where do you think have been your biggest keys to learning how to manage or learning to cultivate leadership within your firm?
yeah, so I think in the early years, probably the key characteristic that helped me start building a team and gathering people around me was my enthusiasm. I loved what I did, and I think that rubbed off on people. Still do. Love it every day, coming in and fighting for people, trying to see justice, and really righting some serious wrongs. I mean, it's about as close to criminal as you can get in the civil world, and I love it. I mean, so I think that enthusiasm really rubbed off, and people were excited to be part of it, largely because I was excited to do it in the beginning, and then they became excited to do it, and now we have a bunch of people who are excited to do it. So, I mean, every day I come to work and I'm just like, what's going to happen next, and who's going to do something crazy in a case, and how can we, prevail for our client? So I think enthusiasm was very important. And then as I got into a little bit more leadership, what I learned, and this is just sort of a really recent in the last, say, year and a half, was a principle that I learned from John Maxwell, who I'll give a lot of credit to. I've learned a lot from him, and what anybody who's on their leadership journey should invest a lot of time in reading his books. He's only written like 100 of them or something, so it's very, very well known. But was to lead yourself. The hardest person to lead is yourself. That's what he would say, and I found that to be true. But once you start leading yourself, you start to be intentional about growth. You be intentional about investing in yourself and learning and growing and being teachable, which is also another important characteristic. Then you can learn to lead others around you. But it kind of starts with yourself. And I wrote down. I heard this morning that the enemy of learning is knowing. Like, I know how to do this, right? Then you can't learn anymore. Once you know it, but if you're always learning, then you can always be growing and you can always improve and take people with you. And so we've developed a culture in just the last year and a half of yes, it was enthusiastic, but now it's intentional and establishing a culture of where, come on, let's grow together. How can we get better? Put down the guardrails that you're an expert at everything, and let's just learn about the law, learn about new things like AI that are changing it, and learn about leadership and soft skills that are very important everybody.
I think that's a wonderful synopsis on how to grow as a person, an individual in personal, professional settings. And that's a common theme I've heard from a lot of people I've talked to is you never stop learning, always be open to growing. And if you want to go and you want people to come with you, lead by example, and people will follow. And some people will fall off, and that's okay. But those that want to come will go for the ride. So
That's right.
um, I think that's a wonderful synopsis. I couldn't have said it better. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some other having a partner? Since I don't have a partner in my primary business, how did you guys delineate the responsibilities? Was it kind of what is more natural to you, or how did you guys pick and choose who's going to do what?
Well, I hit the partner jackpot, and not everybody can say that because there's a lot of disagreements in partnerships. But my partner Todd Poole hired me when I was in law school as my first year in law school, and so I worked for him as like an intern for a couple of years, off and on, not all the time. And then I was an employee, and a couple of years after I became an employee, we partnered up. He took a real risk on me, and we're just really different, which I think makes it work. Our personalities are different, our strengths are different. He thinks a lot more about process and operations, systems, which are vital and important, and I lean into some other things. And to be honest, we don't really have a lot of disagreements. We sometimes we say like the person who feels the strongest about it kind of prevails. Whatever the topic is. If we do have a disagreement, I mean we have some disagreements, but we don't really argue, I guess is a better way to say it.
Sure.
We've only had maybe one or two, in 12 years, and one of them was over like an operating agreement, which we've never looked at really since. So that's just I've hit the jackpot, and I think partnerships really should be more. We should think about it more like a marriage, than what the documents say. Like, do the personalities work? Do your goals align? Do your values align? Unfortunately, ours have, and I've learned a lot from him. I mean, he trained me, mentored me, helped me become the lawyer that I am. So I don't know what to tell people about when they have bad partners, because I've always had a good one. So.
Yeah, well, that's really neat. It's kind of like an intuitive partnership because you guys have been together so long. But I'm sure even when there's some friction, you guys have a level of trust and communication that helps ward off, and you have the conflict resolution built in because you guys have worked with each other and you know what's going to cause some irritation, but where to find common ground and where to compromise. So I think experience is always a great characteristic to overcome potential dispute.
Yes, and we've always sort of evolved just to kind of what the natural strengths were, as far as division of what we're doing.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're both flexible, and hiring a CMO like Margarita's, it's not a cheap pill to swallow. So it sounds like you both have the flexibility and the compromise and the growth mindset to go ahead and keep growing and keep learning, like you had said earlier. So when you're with certain people that share similar philosophies, certain principles, it's easier to get along and go for the ride. So I think that's a credit to you two as partners, and it sounds like your teams have the same philosophy. Excellent. So we're kind of rounding the corner here, and I know you it's a little bit later over there on the East Coast, but for people that are watching this, what are some of the interests you like to do outside of being a fraud buster and a cross-examiner and a lawyer and a counselor and all the wonderful things that come with our work?
Yeah, so I have 4 kids. 3 of them are boys, and right now I am fort building. Treehouse building, really, in the backyard. So that's one of my hobbies. Of course, I'm naturally gifted at framing, as you can imagine, as a lawyer. That's so I'm struggling, but we're having to redo a portion of it. So that's my main hobby. With spending time with my family. I have a great wife who stays at home with them and gives me a lot of freedom to work. But do that, and I love to read. My faith is important to me, and my family. So that's kind of where I'm spending most of my time.
Good for you. Faith, family, home. What are the ages of your boys? And then, I just want to know.
Because 12-year-old boy, 11-year-old girl, 9, and about to turn 7. So,
Oh, wow. You
yeah,
guys had them boom, 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 boom. Well,
yeah, we
you're
were
seeing
trying.
the evolution from now you're seeing them get into their teenage years. How
Yes.
neat. How fun.
Yes.
What motivated you to get into law?
Oh, this is a great question. So my dad had a neighbor, and he was an Orthodox Jewish neighbor, and we did a lot of things with him. He would invite us over when they put the sort of the booth in the backyard to read, I guess, scripture during one of the things, and we just grew very close as a family. And I'd go over and play um, Settlers of Catan, that old board game, with him some. And he was a lawyer. And so I went and hung out with him. He'd take me to his law practice, and we just kind of became buddies. He was almost like an uncle to me or something. And he encouraged me. He goes, John David, you'd be a great lawyer. Why don't you think about going to law school? And that's really why I became a lawyer. Marshall Jaffe, he did not live to see me graduate from law school. Unfortunately, he died while I was in law school, young, from a heart attack. But it goes to show you, like, the power of just one person sort of believing in you. I have no other lawyers in my family, my cousin became a lawyer, but and I'm the first one in my lineage, and his encouragement and his belief in me was the reason that I became one. And so my parents went through some litigation as well. I'll say my dad was a serial entrepreneur, which is probably why I landed in the type of work that I do. So he had some schemes and frauds pulled on him in the business context. I saw that, but that was why I became one, because of Marshall Jaffe. So.
Wow, that's a really inspiring story. And you never know the power of one interaction or one moment might have on someone. Actually was just talking to someone yesterday about how the intersection of time and people can have a ripple effect years down the road. And it just goes to show, always value who you meet, and always be willing to sit back and listen, and not try to always be in a rush, and be kind to people. And you never know what's going to transpire from that intersection of time and people.
Yeah, that belief in people. I've tried to implement what Marshall told me through the years, and that believing in somebody and telling them that you believe in them, and that encouragement, it can change people. I mean, I can look back at a handful of those kind of comments in my life and say, that changed me. I think most people can.
Yeah, I've often asked people for resources or people that they've leaned on in the past, and it's amazing. Oh, my fifth grade teacher, this person, so the truly how powerful people and connections can be are truly impactful on people. So as I said, round the corner, and we're truly rounding the corner, where, one question I always ask people, and I can't take credit for this. If you had 5 dinner guests at your table, past or present, who would you have at your table?
Let's see. I'd have John Maxwell. I'd like to spend some time with him. Abraham Lincoln. He was a fantastic leader. I think I'd like to talk to Winston Churchill. The Apostle Paul is maybe one of the most influential people in history, besides maybe Jesus. And the fifth one, let's see. I don't know. Maybe George Washington or somebody. Some leaders mainly. I would be thinking about leaders. So.
Yeah, you have a lot of strong leadership there. Yeah. All the books on how to lead and how to be a good person.
Wow.
What is one message, if you could broadcast it to anyone, or one message that you try to impart on your children? What is that message?
Try to add value to people every day. That's been what I've been thinking about recently. I've been teaching my kids that as well. What's one thing you can do today as you go to school? How can you add value to somebody else? And I talk through them. Of course, they're young. Can you open the door for someone, smile and greet them? Can you encourage them? My daughter's in that sort of preteen era where you can get a little feisty. I'm encouraging her to think about what she can do to add value, be a good friend, and encourage people instead of detracting or criticizing. We can connect with people or we can criticize people, but you can't do both. So that'd be my message. Add value.
Very strong. Very strong. Thank you. For everyone that is watching, where can they find you and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find us at wefightfearlessly.com. That's our firm website, and you can find my profile on there if you'd like. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me. It's been truly a wonderful conversation, and we'd love to have you back anytime you want.
Logan, it was great to be with you. Love listening to your magician, last episode, the magician stage builder. That was very interesting. So you're doing a great job on the podcast, and you've got a great practice.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Quirky Podcast. I hope you enjoyed diving into another inspiring journey and found some nuggets of wisdom to take with you. If you love this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a conversation. You can find all our episodes on your favorite podcast platforms and on YouTube. Until next time, stay curious, be inspired, and keep carving your own unique path. Catch you on the next episode of Quirky Podcast.